Hello, Malcolm here, and welcome to Tuesday Teaching Tips. It's episode 310, and it's the latest in our series called The Beatitudes, an effective communication, lessons for preachers and teachers. And today we are up to the Beatitude, which is about being merciful. And why are we doing this? We're doing this because we're wondering what it might be like, what might the effect be on you and me and on our hearers if we were to prepare and then present our lessons through the lens of the Beatitudes or through the filter. What would that actually be like? These teachings of Jesus are so significant, we apply them to our lives generally, but shouldn't we as teachers and preachers apply them to the way in which we preach and teach? I think if you look at the life of Jesus, you'll see he embodied this in his preaching and teaching. Now, verse 7 of chapter 5 of Matthew, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Pretty important, right? I think the beatitude about being meek has to come before this, because the meek are the people who understand who they are and their weaknesses, you could say, and their limitations. And it's in understanding that it helps us then to understand our own and for our need for mercy to become clear to us. So the meekness precedes the mercy. That's helpful. We need to get that down first. Let's talk a little bit about what this means in the Bible itself, the idea of being merciful. Mercy is something that's emphasized in Matthew. There are several references I'll put in the show notes. And in fact, if you want to really, one book in the Bible that describes and talks about mercy more than any other, it might be the book of Romans. Tons of stuff in there. Have a look at Romans if you want to understand that better, especially from a New Testament perspective. Why is mercy important? Well, God is merciful. That's the bottom line for all of this, isn't it? Ephesians 2 verse 4, it says God is rich in mercy. So you and I as preachers and teachers, we're not going to use mercy as a technique or a tool. We need to be enriched by God's mercy and then rich in the way that we talk about God in his mercy with other people, because that's the nature of God. So our aim is not to salt our lessons with a bit of mercy. Our aim is to be rich in our mercy in the way that we preach and teach. Jesus, as ever, is our example. He enjoyed showing mercy to so many people. Even on the cross, he's merciful. Forgive them, they do not know what they are doing. Which inspired, I'm sure, Stephen, when he was martyred, again, to ask God to forgive those who were responsible for his death. Onesiphorus is held up as someone who can look forward to God's mercy, 2 Timothy 1. Other examples in the Bible of merciful people would include Abraham rescuing his undeserving nephew Lot, Joseph forgiving his family, Moses with Miriam's leprosy, David sparing Saul when he's hiding in the caves. A lot of mercy in the Bible, and it's lifted up for us to see, to imitate. So what does it mean for a preacher or a teacher? Well, if a preacher or teacher like you and me is fully invested in mercy, really desiring it, valuing it, then we won't use the pulpit as an opportunity for revenge. Let's be honest. It happens. I know I've done it. It was a long time ago. I don't do it now. I pray I never do it again, but I have done it, sadly. Use the pulpit as an opportunity for revenge. Someone's offended me. I'll preach a point that's really for them. And it's not really to help them. It's to make me feel better, to get revenge. That's a terrible thing to do. Don't do that. But if we're fully invested in mercy, that would never even occur to us, because we're grateful for the mercy we've received. Therefore, we would be merciful to others, even if they have hurt us in a way that's not deserving. And if we are accepting of our need for mercy, we will gladly offer it to others, unlike the Pharisee compared to the tax collector in Luke chapter 18. If we know our need for mercy, we will show it to others. And as we do that, we will become more Christ-like and more able to help our audience to become more Christ-like. Also, a merciful preacher or teacher will not stand above their audience. They'll stand alongside to assist them. We preachers and teachers are not there to judge our audience. We're there to say, we hope what we have here will help you as we help one another to become more Christ-like. In Matthew 7 verse 2, in the same way you judge others, you will be judged. With the measure you use, it will be measured to you. We need to be very careful about not being judgmental on our audience when we preach and teach, but instead, as we depend on the mercy of God, convey the mercy of God to other people. So in preparation, when you've got your text, you might like to ask yourself these questions. Firstly, In studying this, I'm looking at this for my next lesson. In what way does this text reveal the mercy of God? I'm preaching on David and Abigail on Sunday from 1 Samuel 25. That's a good question for me to ask, and there's a lot in that story about the mercy of God. Another question you might like to ask is, in what way does this text show us how to be merciful to other people? We see that in 1 Samuel 25, the way that David is merciful once Abigail speaks to him. And then you may want to pray about your conclusions, asking God to help you live out the fruit of your study that week by looking for opportunities to be merciful to people. That's got to be my prayer, that this week, before I preach this passage, that I will find opportunities to be merciful to people, and that will help me to live it. Because if I live it, I'll preach it a lot better, won't I? And what about in our presentation? In our presentation phase, we should remember that we are a Christian preacher and teacher, and that we are talking about Christ, and he is merciful. So we must make sure that we convey that Christ's love, that he loves being merciful. He enjoys it. He doesn't have to be cajoled into being merciful. And we want to convey the mercy of Christ to those we're speaking to so that they can be inspired by it. Remembering that in Hebrews chapter 2 and verse 17, it says that he became a merciful and faithful high priest. That's in his nature. It's his purpose. It's a lot of his meaning. Or chapter 4, we can approach the throne of grace with confidence so that we may receive mercy and find grace. God wants us to come there. We don't have to shape up. We just need to approach. And that affects the way that we preach and teach. You may want to consider your natural tendency. Perhaps you find it very easy to preach about mercy. Perhaps you find it hard. I realized a few years ago that I found it a lot easier to preach about judgment than mercy. That was a shortcoming in my preaching and teaching, and I've corrected that, I hope, effectively. There are times to talk about the judgment of God, not my judgment, but his judgment. But we must, I would say, major on the mercy, because it's the love of God that enables all the other things that are good about God to become a reality for us. Commenting on the nature of Jesus in Matthew chapter 12, the author says, quoting from the Old Testament, "A bruised reed he will not break, a smouldering wick he will not snuff out, till he has brought justice through to victory." Bruised reed he doesn't break, smouldering wick he doesn't snuff out, gentle and merciful. That's the nature of our Messiah. There are many benefits for us and our hearers if we take this approach of being merciful. Firstly, we will end up speaking with humanity and humility. We'll be a real normal person, not some judgmental preacher. Secondly, in doing it this way, we will reveal the heart of Christ, that merciful heart of Christ. We'll reveal that better to the people listening to us. And prayerfully then, we will then inspire and motivate our hearers to Christ-likeness, perhaps particularly in this area of being merciful with one another and those in the world. Well, next week we're going to go on to the next the Beatitude, the sixth Beatitude. But for today, I'd like to know what you think about this one. How can you and I preach and teach in a way that is informed by this Beatitude, that is preaching and teaching as a merciful person, trusting that if we do so, that well, then we will be shown the mercy of God? Let me know what you think. I would be very grateful for that. So drop me a message. malcolm@malcolmcox.org is the email. You can go to the website, malcolmcox.org. If you would like my newsletter, then sign up there for the newsletter, and I'll send you a free copy of my ebook on how God grows his people. If you know anybody that might benefit, please pass the link on. Subscribe, notification button, bell thing, all that kind of good stuff. And I hope and pray that between now and the next time that you find yourself able to be inspired by the mercy of God to preach not only about it, but preach in a merciful way to those you're going to be speaking to. And until the next time, keep calm and carry on teaching. Take care and God bless.